Hi there. Now I will start planking the hull. And I prepared with putting up the keel line so that the spacing is correct between all the bulkheads, also up here and not only down here. When you start planking the hull, you want to start in the middle and continue outwards, because otherwise you may pull the bulkheads in the wrong or different direction. Normally, when you buy plans, the constructor has thought about where to put the first strip. But in my case, I haven't thought about that yet. So it's time to do that. And you want to find where the curvature changes direction. I have made the molds so that they are widest at 10 cm above the waterline. Thus, if I start to build here, it will be possible to pull the finished hull up from the molds. So here is the middle, and here is 10 cm above the waterline. And I will use that as a starting point. So I will clamp this strip here. And then it's just to continue. And here you can see that it's a little bit of a gap there. So maybe I should leave this as it is and allow this gap here. Actually, it will be a nicer curve here. I think I will leave this as it is and only fasten the strip here. That was the first one. So now it's important to go to the other side, so you work symmetrical and don't do one side first, because then you might actually pull the alignment wrong. Now that I have the first strip in place on both sides, I can add the next layer. It's still important to start in the middle and work towards the sides. To fit the strips to the bow, I need to remove the excess, both from the keel strip and from the side strips. The third layer goes on in the same way. I use wood glue for pre-bonding. It's relatively safe and easy to use. I secure the strips to each other between the molds. The staples also secure the strips. But with clamps and glue I can get an even surface between the molds. Here, where the hull surface changes direction in multiple ways, I must change tactics. One way is to cut small pieces of strips. Shape these to the odd shape. Dry fit the piece, and when happy, glue it in place. Here I'm actually building an oversized extra thick hull, which will fill the voids, but will later need to be sanded down to the correct thickness and shape. It's tedious with all gluing and clamping, but after trimming you can see that it will be possible. I will also need to sand down to an even surface on the inside, as also the inside needs to be thickened to fill all voids, although I have pre-shaped the wood that I glue in. Also at the fifth layer I continue working on both sides, by taking care with gluing and clamping to get an even surface. I will need less sanding to get a fair surface. I use the smaller clamps to level the surfaces of the two uppermost strips, and the larger clamps to squeeze a gap between the two strips. Staples are to hold the strips towards the mold. In the end, staples are not always enough, and I need to combine with clamps. If the bend is small, wood glue and staples are enough, but the wood glue might not hold if the bend is too large. So I have to mix up some epoxy glue. I mix epoxy with cotton fibers and some sawdust. This will make a glue that is strong and has similar color as the strips. I will later fill all voids between the strips with a similar mixture. So this is no waste but secures the strips in place while I'm building. I use some glue to fill voids in the back end as well. I work with the pencil in 45-degree angle towards the strips. This fills the voids between the strips. If the bend is strong like here, and shaping to fit doesn't do the trick. I can try to soften the strip with heat. The lignin and hemicellulose softens with heat. If the wood is moist, less heat is needed. This dry strips still gets a small bend. Most of the building involves a lot of dry fitting, followed by more shaping and more dry fitting, before I finally can glue the piece in place and staple it. Clamps are also needed to level the strips. Otherwise it will be a gap or at least a thin hull at the joint. Extra pressure is needed at the upper edge. To fit the next strip I need to saw the end. I align the saw with the keel strip and cut the ending. Here I use more wood glue and press the strip in place, stapling in the upper inner end and in the very end. Although I need to pull the strip down hard before I staple it in place. Finishing with leveling clamps. Up here with all the fittings in the ends, I work from the back end and forwards instead from the middle. Otherwise I would need to fight both ends into place. Here I can get a reasonable fit in the back end without fighting. Do some strip condensing in the middle and let most tricky fitting wait until the front. And as the shape is less extreme here, it's still not so troublesome. A little shaping in the front end and in the lower end. And I can glue it in place without too much force. Small screw clamps are best to apply exactly the wanted pressure at the exact place. Up here I'm reaching the upper reach of my longer clamps. But as the shape is less extreme here, they are not so critical. Better pre-fitting also helps. And I also got to use masking tape. Still only glue is not enough. Working from the less bendy stretch and forward, using staples, I get the strip to obey. For the last open space I need a pencil to mark the edge from the inside, so I can see where to cut. Planing to introduce an angle. Good but not good enough. Some rasp work. And it will fit. Soon time for some celebration. This strip fits well. The staple isn't really necessary, but the clamps are until the glue has cured. This strip was dry fitted in both ends before I put it down. The second last strip needs more careful fitting, as there is little room for clamps. Now the whiskey strip. This needs to be carefully fitted on all sides, so the belt sander gets handy. With all needed dry fitting, until I can glue it in place. So now I have installed the last keel strip, and it's time for a little celebration. So in older times you were supposed to have a toast in whiskey when you finished. So I will have some single malt whiskey to celebrate this occasion. Cheers! So the next thing to happen is to cover everything in epoxy to strengthen all the joints in the strip hull. But I will do that next episode, so please join me then.